The patient starts in a supine or seated position with ankle and foot in a neutral position and 0 degrees of IP joint flexion or extension. This goniometer alignment can be used for both MTP flexion and extension. The proximal arm should follow the lateral midline of the metatarsal. The distal arm should follow the lateral midline of the proximal phalanx, and the fulcrum is the lateral aspect of the MTP joint. This measurement can also be taken on the dorsal aspect of the foot using the same landmarks as reference. First, the PT will demonstrate MTP flexion. Stabilize at the metatarsal. Pull the great toe downward toward the plantar surface into flexion. Avoid pushing on the distal phalanx. Stop when resistance is felt and limits motion, or when compensations prevent proper motion. The end feel should be firm. Right first MTP flexion passive range of motion 0 to 55 degrees. Next, the PT is going to demonstrate MTP extension. Stabilize at the metatarsal. Push the proximal phalanx toward the dorsum of the foot, moving the MTP into extension. Avoid pushing on the distal phalanx. Stop when resistance is felt and limits any more motion, or when compensations prevent proper motion. The end feel should be firm. Right first MTP extension passive range of motion 0 to 72 degrees. The patient starts in a supine or seated position with foot in 0 degrees inversion, eversion, and the MTP IP joints are in 0 degrees flexion or extension. The proximal arm is in line with the dorsal midline of the metatarsal. The distal arm should be in line with the dorsal midline of the proximal phalanx, and the fulcrum is the dorsal aspect of the MTP joint. Stabilize at the metatarsal. Pull the proximal phalanx of the toe laterally from the midline of the foot into abduction. Avoid pushing on the distal phalanx. Stop when resistance limits motion or when compensations prevent proper motion. The end feel should be firm. Right first MTP abduction passive range of motion 0 to 15 degrees. The patient starts in a supine or seated position with ankle and foot in a neutral position. The following goniometer alignment can be used for both IP flexion and extension. The proximal arm should follow the lateral midline of the proximal phalanx. The distal arm is the lateral midline of the phalanx distal to the joint being tested, and the fulcrum is the lateral aspect of the IP joint being tested. This measurement can also be taken on the dorsal aspect of the foot using the same landmarks as reference. Now the PT will demonstrate IP flexion. Stabilize at the metatarsal and proximal phalanx. Pull the distal phalanx of the first toe or the middle phalanx of the lesser toes down toward the plantar surface of the foot. Stop when resistance limits motion or when compensations prevent proper motion. The end feel should be soft, or it could be firm due to tension in the dorsal joint capsule or collateral ligaments. Right great toe IP flexion, passive range of motion 0 to 83 degrees. Next, the PT is going to demonstrate IP extension, but note that this measurement is not usually taken. Stabilize at the metatarsal and proximal phalanx. Push the distal phalanx of the first toe or the middle phalanx of the lesser toes up toward the dorsal surface of the foot from flexion to the 0 starting position. Stop when resistance limits motion or when compensations prevent proper motion. The end feel should be hard. Right great toe IP extension, passive range of motion 0 to 5 degrees.